Hey guys, welcome to another episode of On Air. Exciting one. Today I am joined by Kate King. Kate is Head of Recruitment at Seed Talent. Many of you would have seen Seed launched over the last few months as a part of our organisation, Air Marketing. And Kate joined the organisation to head that part of our business up. And I'm bringing her on the interview today to talk about the state of SDR recruitment, what's working well, what's not working well, how has it changed over the last 6-12 months, and how do we see that going into 2023, what's working for organisations as they grow their SDR orgs. And we're seeing a lot of change in that market. Before we get into topic though, Kate, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, really good to have you on. I guess that the first thing we always do with our guests is give them 2 minutes and no more. 2 minutes to tell us who's Kate and who is Seed Talent. What do you do?
Okay, so who is Kate? Kate, I don't know who Kate is most days, but Kate is has got I could say extensive recruitment business, but actually my previous life was hospitality background, working with businesses really from scaling them up from the ground zero to building teams and working with key accounts globally within, for sort of 12-15 years. I did that, then went into recruitment and found that I absolutely loved recruitment, and here I am now at Seed and launching a business and launching a brand new concept. So what Seed is, what Seed does, Seed has got a niche, I guess, in as much as, yes, we offer a 360 recruitment process. So we can take your inquiry, we can find people, we can place them within your business. However, what we do is we provide an onboarding and a training and a consultative process to our recruitment, which we'll go into a bit more later with regards to why we've done that and how we think that's going to be able to help businesses moving forward. So Seed focuses on SDR and account executive recruitment within the SaaS space primarily. And again, we'll go and I'm sure we'll have questions and conversations around that. So Seed is here to become a recruitment business based in the southwest of England, but actually, recruiting wherever the demand is. We're looking to grow and scale our own business as well as support other businesses to do the same thing. And we're early on in our journey, and so far so good.
Love that. So let's move straight into topic, which we always like to get stuck in, because people watching and listening, they want to learn from you. So I guess the obvious question to start with is around SDR recruitment. We've seen over the last 12 months organizations moving from we can't hire fast enough, hard to find people, let's hire lots of grads and bring them in with no experience, to much more, I guess, demand on people with experience, on proven performers, and perhaps not the same challenge in finding people, because we're seeing some organizations shrink their sales force in SaaS at the moment. Just keen to get your general feeling on the market from an SDR recruitment perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly changing. That is for sure. You're right. If we look 12 months ago, it was, almost an impossible feat. And now, it's a very, very candidate-led market completely. And I don't think that's going to change for the next at least sort of 12 to 18 months. I think it will continue to be candidate-led. I think there's a two-way approach to this. There are businesses out there that will look, let's just take grads, let's take people with limited experience and let's train them up. And actually, some businesses did that well. But then there's that other piece of businesses that actually they were scaling up their own business, right? So they put these SDRs in with limited experience, with limited knowledge, and then became the problem of, well, who's going to train these people? Who's actually going to give them the tools to be able to do their job? And then what happened is we saw, retention was pretty shocking because they'd done sort of 6 months, they'd learned a bit, they then move on, they then go somewhere else, they then go to another company that's providing a bit more sales training. So there's two routes to this. You either do what we're saying at Seed, that, you're open to taking people that have got limited sales experience, but give them back to us, give them back to what we do at Air, and let's train them and let's onboard them and let's really give them the tools to be able to do their job. Or you look at it from another side, another point where we'll get a great recruiter to find us these great people, but that great recruiter will consult us on actually where else can these people come from. And where else these people come from is not just people that have done that job necessarily just on the phones for 2 years. It's being open-minded to look at other industries that people have done that job. So, you know, estate agents make great SDRs in key skills. You know, recruitment people that have tried recruitment and don't like recruitment. You know, you're outbound calling all the time, you're hunter, you're gathering. It's those key SDR strengths that we look for. So it's about finding, as a consultant, finding the need of that business and what's important to them as people as they grow and scale their own business, and then working with them to be able to provide the solution. And I think that's what's important, is that understanding from a recruitment point of view, really.
Interesting that you touch on the organisations who hired and were hiring, maybe are still hiring a lot of SDRs, but aren't effectively operationally ready for that. And what we do is we negate our responsibility to help people develop, to help people go in the right direction. And it's great to hear that there's a way of approaching that solution, because of course organisations that are taking on funding, they've got to scale, right? They have to justify why they needed that money, which is bringing in headcount. But sometimes quantity becomes louder than quality. And I think that's what we've seen over the last 12 months. I guess one of the obvious things to talk about is when you're in talking, or your team are in talking to SDR candidates, what are some of the things that you're looking for in terms of outside of spec? So what are some of the softer skills, the personality-led things that you look for that make a good SDR?
I mean, that's a great question. This is something I'm hugely passionate about. And when we work and we talk to SDRs, because, you know, for us, it's important to have a great client base as it is to have a great candidate base. And a lot of these SDRs we're talking to, you know, are young, are new into their journey of working life. And they come on the phone and we're screening them, and they're saying to us, look, I want to be an SDR in the SaaS space. This is what I want to do, Kate. This is what I want to be. And I go, right, okay. And I look through their CV. Now, some of them are more obvious, that actually, you know, you can see what they've done and you can see that quite clearly. And others, you begin talking to them and you think, well, why the heck have you not put that on your CV? You know, competitive sport at county level for 2 years. You know, they've done the Duke of Edinburgh, they've done 10 tours, they've done all these things outside of their education that they've been told to do, that they've chosen to do. They've volunteered, they've done all these things, you know, and these are great things that we look for, because this shows discipline. It shows, you know, that you're actually interested as a person in personal development, and that's really important. It's also somebody that has that natural hunger, that natural drive, and also their natural assurance about themselves as an individual. You can't be a self-doubter if you want to be a good SDR. You know, you really have to believe in your own ability without having that cockiness. You have to really believe in your key strengths and be able to articulate them. But sometimes it's about, our job is to uncover those, because they're sort of saying, no, I'm applying for this, I'm applying for this, and not getting anywhere. And actually, it's about taking it back to its raw state of us consulting and saying, the reason we think you're not getting anywhere is because actually you need to shout about that. You need to say, this is what you've done, and you need to really portray yourself, you know. And this comes back to how we educate people with their LinkedIn branding as well, and how important that is, and the activity they're doing on LinkedIn. If you want to be an SDR, you need to be engaging with every company on LinkedIn that is promoting that they have an SDR capability, making comments, showing interest, following their businesses, creating your own brand, selling yourself to these businesses, why they need to employ you. So there's loads of things we would look for way, way deeper than just what they've written on a piece of paper. And the initial thing is if someone has a CV which they send in or we come across and we think, oh, I'm not sure, I'll always look at their LinkedIn. I'll always go to their LinkedIn as a matter of course. And sometimes you think, okay, you can see exactly what they're doing and how they're interacting. And then others are absolutely fantastic at selling all their skills.
It's interesting. I'm keen to hear what organizations are telling you around what channels they're prioritizing or what tactics they're using to go to market at the moment, because it feels to me as though people, SDRs 3, 4, 5 years ago were very email heavy, and maybe social brand and the social brand's coming through and the phone is making a bit of a comeback in terms of, if I want an SDR, I need somebody who's prepared to pick up the phone. I need somebody who knows how to use LinkedIn as a tool, as a social selling tool. And maybe the email piece is less important, but that's obviously what I'm seeing. What are you seeing on your travels?
I definitely agree that I think that the core principles are coming back in terms of, years ago, if an SDR didn't pick up the phone, that there was just no, and I'm not saying the places of social selling is not there, because fundamentally social selling for me is where I see most of it being done. LinkedIn for me is the biggest tool of all in this space and SDR space and account executive space, recruitment space, all of it. But the phone very much has its place, and I think the phone has its place for that initial contact, to then use the other tools that we've got, such as the social selling and the email, to then follow up and to then continue that conversation. But again, and I'm really passionate about this, I think it's really important to let people use their own tools and be their own person to get the best out of an individual. So again, this is an education to a lot of companies that we have to make, that actually, just because you as a business say, oh no, that's the way we do it, if you've got 10 people in a room, I can guarantee you they're all going to sell completely differently. And the companies that have the best success and the best retention of their staff are the ones that actually let those staff, within parameters, use their own skills and their own selling techniques to actually generate their leads and generate their business.
Yeah, it's interesting. What you touched on that around kind of the ones that are retaining SDRs are often the ones that give freedom to their SDRs, and I guess there's some mechanisms for managing that and supporting SDRs too. Are there other things that you see good organizations doing that make themselves more attractive in the hiring process for SDRs? So, let's be fair. I think there's, probably 10,000 SDR roles out there. Last time I checked, I think I saw, nearly 3,000 SDR adverts on LinkedIn for London alone a couple of weeks ago. So if I'm an SDR or potential budding SDR looking to get in, how on earth do I know where to start looking at that many roles? What are the great companies doing outside of paying well, which is the obvious one? What are they doing to attract candidates for application, but then also through the hiring process, make sure they stay number one choice for good SDRs?
Yeah, it's really interesting, because they are much of a muchness in terms of an SDR. It might vary by location slightly, but generally the package is around. We're not talking, tens of thousands of pounds of difference, really. So what makes it good? Well, if you were comparing, and an SDR will sit there and think, well, where the heck do I start? Because if, like you rightly say, 3,000 companies apply, advertising these roles, they're just click happy. They're sort of, and actually what happens with that is they're getting multiple offers, multiple interviews, and there's not that kind of real buy-in and commitment from them, which makes it, from a recruitment point of view, very frustrating, because we're not getting that. So this is it's an education piece from us to a client about how you can differentiate yourself. Now, a lot of companies now, I've seen a few people on LinkedIn doing videos about their company, walking through their business, what we can offer you, what our culture is. And culture is hugely important to SDRs, primarily because it will be one of their first working environments. So, you know, if you've been around the block, as it were, and you've done 4 or 5, you become broader shouldered, and maybe it's not so as important to you because there's more, you know, you're defined more within your own role. But when you're sat generally within an office with potentially 10 up to 40 other people, that culture is really important. You know, what's gonna sort of spur you on when you've had an absolute horrendous day on the phones? What's going to make you want to get up and come back in that office the next day? So culture is for me number one, and I think a lot of companies will agree with that, but again, it's an education piece on this is how you will keep your staff, by making them feel valued, by being different, and it's not just about money. I mean, it's not just, you know, we're going to chuck more bonus at you. It's small gestures. It's, you know, offering them a subsidy to come into travel into work, give them a bit, you know, give them a bit of free food when they're in the office, give them some fun days, do an end of month, you know, there's all these different things that you can do to make them feel valued, I guess. And actually, I think there's a real point in that with an SDR, is why making them feel valued, because ultimately we know, you know, they're an entry level position, they churn quite quickly, you know, there's lots of them. So, but they're still a person, right? And this is a really important role to them. So how can that company make them feel valued, and what do they offer that makes them feel they want to come into work every day? But also, I think it's about, where does the progression lie for them? Where does it go after they're an SDR? Can they see a clear route with that business, or are they seeing that, okay, I'll just do this for 9 months, 10 months, 12 months until something else comes on? So it's all of that.
I love that point about the fact that they're still human. I think it circle back to the very first point of topic we had around how organizations had to scale so quickly in what was an economic boom for SaaS 12 months ago, post-pandemic, but economic crisis in the UK, so to speak, or financial crisis. We saw organizations grow so quickly. I think they forgot that. I think they forgot that people were human. You know, we've got to hire another 30 SDRs this year. I mean, it's madness when you think about it. You can't do that well, effectively, efficiently, or 50. I had somebody right in December, January last year saying we've got an SDR target of 55 SDRs we've got to hire in the UK across 2022. And I'm thinking, you can't do that well and look after people. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can if you've got the infrastructure and the right managers and the right, but you know, if you're working on a 1-to-8 ratio for an SDR leader to an SDR, that's say 6-7 more SDR managers and leaders you have. Well, they're not going to come out your current cohort at that speed. So are you hiring external ones in which case, do they understand the business? Do they understand the culture? So even if you've got the hiring process, the onboarding process right, the management of those people probably is going to be done by people who haven't managed before. And if they've got the support when the company is growing and scaling so quickly on a headcount level, and it's that sort of stuff that I think you hit the nail on the head there. People forgot that these people are humans and that role is the most important role they've ever had to date. And you know, that's a really poignant point. I think I just want to touch on this hiring process piece, and at a time where people have got to go out and find, let's not go 55, but let's say 2, 3, 4 SDRs, 5 SDRs maybe. Where would you put the priority on that swing between speed and quality? So got to hire fast, get people in, you've got to respond fast to be, you know, talking to them and to be considered equally. You want to get it right and maybe not slow the process down too much, but have the relevant number of steps in the recruitment process. Make sure you spend the right time, do something practical with them in the hiring process so you actually see them work well and you get a higher percentage chance of them, A, being able to perform, B, being the right people that will stick within the organization. So be interested to get your commentary around that kind of speed of hire versus quality.
Yeah, it's a really valid point. I think it's the bane of my life, this, if I'm honest, because you know, you've got a lot of companies that we work with are scaling up, right? So they are at the busiest time that they will ever be in their business, and they are trying to do everything and be everyone to everything. So they're trying to put SDRs in place. They then most likely haven't got an SDR team leader because they haven't even got an SDR team. So then they put the SDRs in place, and these are VPs, right? So, they're not salespeople. They haven't managed SDRs. So then they put them in the business expecting them to do a job. And then what happens? So this is what I said to you before about this real need find. It's really about understanding where the company is, where it is in its sort of plan, and then how involved do you want us as a recruiter to be involved in this process, i.e. the implementation, the onboarding, the training, the hand-holding, all of that. But then what it's about is that company letting go and putting their trust in the person that they're paying to do a job. We are consultants and we are partners, and we are here to aid that growth. So, if you're looking for 2 SDRs next week, right, you might be lucky because I might have a bank of wonderful people there ready to go. But actually, if you are looking for 2 people next week and I can fulfill that need for you, what does it look like in your business afterwards? Because what I don't want to do is put those 2 amazing candidates into a business that they're then going to flop and fail because there's not the support to put in. So it's about really, from the initial phone call, really understanding, right, this is what we do, this is what you do, how is this going to work, and what's realistic? Because actually it's very easy for a recruiter to go, oh yeah, I'll take the job, I can fulfill it. But actually what you need to do is be realistic, and you need to go, right, I've listened to what you've said, this is what I think is realistic, and this is how we can work. Now we have a commitment to our agreement, and you have a commitment to our agreement as well. And it's about trying to get onto the same page if we're both working. Now, in recruitment, one thing you cannot control is people, and you cannot control what they do. So as much as I would love to say we can work completely within the parameters of our agreement, it doesn't always work like that, and people do things every day that still amaze me. So, I can never control that, but sometimes what you think and what we can work within will change and will differ. But on the majority, it's just about the need for speed versus the need of quality. And that quality comes down to retention in your business. Now, would you rather spend 2 weeks longer trying to find the person that's going to stay for 4 years than you would find that person that's going to come in, do an okay job for a year and go somewhere else? What's the most cost-effective recruitment process here, right? But also it comes down to the recruiter, and it comes down to that the need for the recruiter to understand as well, because if your business needs that person, sometimes we've got to rejuggle and we've got to prioritize as a company. What do we need to do in order to make that happen for that client? Do I need to put somebody else on that job solely to get them to where they need? So what I'm getting at is that every single client and every process is actually different. Even though what we offer in entity is the same, every conversation is a different conversation. And I think that's the key, is not just being a soulless process, that actually we're a partner and we're a consultant. And actually as well, as the business grows and scales, so will the needs of recruitment, and so will the approach to recruitment. And that evolves and that changes. So that's why we like to partner and grow and scale with businesses, because then you go on this journey and then you become a partner of that, and then the trust, it's an ongoing process. The trust forms, the relationships there. It's great to see companies. And for me, if I look back and I look at companies and that these people are still here 4 years, 5 years later, you think, fantastic, great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to look at it the other way, from an SDR's perspective. I think you've mentioned one thing already that I'll probably throw in the mix around things that you would recommend to SDRs to stand out in the hiring process. One of them you've talked about, which is LinkedIn profile, making sure you've got a good LinkedIn profile, making sure you're active and you're engaging on LinkedIn, because that's almost a a minimum standard of expectation now. Are there other things that you would be telling SDRs they need to be thinking about before they go applying for SDR roles, whether they've done the role before or not?
Yeah, I think, right, so there's like a shopping list I always sort of say to them. So CV layout, make it stand out, because you've got to imagine these people are seeing hundreds and hundreds, and I see hundreds and hundreds, and actually it's so old school, but it still comes back to the first thing people see. So have a good CV, like really think about how you're setting it out, and not just jargon of what you've done. What are your key skills? Make your key skills really visual on your CV, so actually you can see that. LinkedIn profile, massive, and what you're doing on your LinkedIn profile. So look at the trends within the economy. What is trending now? What is current? What do people like? Is it TikTok? Is it video? Is it whatever? What can you do? Can you? And I say to SDRs, think about it like this is your profile. So instead of just sending a CV, do a video recording of yourself. Why should they employ you? And send that as a link to a hiring manager, because I guarantee they won't have seen as many of those as they would have CVs. Do something different, do something off the wall, do something that's going to make you stand out in this massive sea of SDRs. Make sure you know how to sell yourself. And if you haven't had loads of experience, what are the things that have made you think that you could be really good in this job through your life experience? What have you done? And think back all the way back to, your first jobs, did you play sport? Like I said, but, competitive sport is one I talk about a lot. And the reason I talk about that is not because you've got to go and be a, huge athlete and run whatever, but have you shown up to a team sport? Have you been dedicated to do something? Have you kept going back even though actually it was late one night, you couldn't be bothered to go in the rain and train? Have you done that? Because that shows that you can apply yourself, and then use that experience in your life and say, this is why I'd be good for your business, because I will show up and I will apply myself and I will dedicate. And that's what people want to hear. People want to hear why they should hire you, other than just, oh yeah, I'd be a great SDR. Yeah, because that's what people say. I'd be a great SDR. Why would you?
Yeah, it's a really good question, isn't it? And I think if you can't communicate that, that's probably the red flag sign in the first place.
And there is no right or wrong.
Sorry, go ahead.
There is no right or wrong. There is no, I can't say what makes a great SDR in textbook, because I truly believe there is a different elements. And this is why I said, if you have 10 people in a room, they'll all sell differently. And actually every business to be successful needs different elements of different people to be successful.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I think a lot of people make that mistake of thinking you've got to be gifted the gab, confident, etc. But some of the quieter people that I've worked with over the years in SDR teams have been absolute, top performers. They might be as quiet as a mouse in the office around people. They may not speak up in team meetings, but they're effective and they do the job really well. So I think it's a very good point. Just on that note, final question from me. I've seen more and more content around the degree or no degree discussion when it comes to candidates. So organizations are still out there now saying, I need so-and-so, must have a degree. And others are nowhere near that. They've moved past that. What's your take as a recruiter on the degree? Is there value to asking for it or preferring it? Or do you see it a different way now for SDRs, AEs within SaaS organizations specifically?
If a client says to me, I need them to have a degree, my first question is always why. I always ask them, why do you want them to have a degree? Now, if they can give me a real solid, justified reason, fine. Generally, when I push back and ask that question, there isn't. It's like somebody saying to me, I want an SDR when they have to have SaaS experience. And I will always push back and say, why do they need the SaaS experience? Because product can be taught, right, in my opinion. So it's a really interesting one. I have a degree, and what I gained from going to university has 100% made me get to the place where I've got to today. 100%, because it gave me something as an individual. Did I study to be a vet and I've become a vet? No, I studied business and I've ended up in recruitment, right? But what it gave me that discipline, of showing all of that. Now, that's what a lot of companies are saying when they're saying they want a degree. That's what they're saying. They're not saying they want someone to have a degree to be an SDR. They're saying they want them to have shown that they've applied themselves for 4 years. So therefore, this is what I'm saying about if you haven't got a degree, this is why your CV needs to showcase all those things that people think a degree means. Does that make sense? So, you know, if you haven't gone to university and you haven't been involved and you haven't moved away from home and you haven't, you know, done all these things that you would generally do at university, what have you been doing for those 4 years that actually bring you up to that standard?
It's an interesting point. So what we're saying is that what we're looking for as an employer is that life experience is a bit, you know, because we know the average SDR could be between 20 and 25 years old.
And that's all it is. It's life experience. What have you been doing? You know, so if you've, and that's all it is, because, you know, there's no justified real reason why a company wants an SDR to have a degree. There is, in my opinion. It's but the underlying answer is I want to know that people actually have come to us. They haven't got loads of work experience, but these guys are, you know, 22 up to 25. What have they been doing with their life? What have they done? You know?
Yeah, makes sense. Really good point. Kate, thank you so much. I think it's been really interesting to pick apart the recruitment market for SDRs at the moment. We always give our guests a chance just to highlight who can See Talent help, and how can people get in touch if they want to talk to you as well. So over to you.
Thank you. You know, See Talent are here to partner. I think I've sort of made that really clear, and I've tried to make that clear. We're here to partner. We're here to listen, and we're here to help you grow and scale all across the UK. You know, we'll go anywhere if the business is there. But you know, if you're looking for an SDR requirement, if you're looking for an account executive requirement, and even customer success, these are all roles that we have specialists in, and roles that we look to work within your business, listen to your needs, and to help you offer that 360 recruitment process, as well as the onboarding and the training, which we can also deliver. So if you'd like to hear more, have a conversation, you can find me on LinkedIn under Kate King, under Seed Talent. You can email me at katek@seed-talent.com.
Lovely. Kate, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Bye-bye.